At Wayfair.
I love it when you call me Big Papa. Throw your hands in the air. I'm not even going to try that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Differently Wired Show, episode 36, Anxiety. We will get into all the usual good stuff as we usually do on this show, because that's what we're all about, the good stuff. I'm your host, as always, Max Derrat, your friendly neighborhood Simpsons kin. And joining me, as always, sitting to my immediate left, right, center. The great thing about these headphones is that they're like, what is it, binaural audio, so it's like he's everywhere inside my head. Everywhere. He is PhD. He is the inspiration for the role that Robin Williams played in Good Will Hunting, allegedly. At least it's what I've been told by him. He is John Tucker. John, what's happening?
I'm here all over listening to your show and being part of it.
Cool. Yeah, it was either from Good Will Hunting or The Fisher King. I can't remember. Anyways, or The Genie. We've got a lot of stuff to get into today, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, we got to get to the Call of Duty giveaway, and I know there's a little bit of controversy surrounding that. I'll get to that when we deal with it. Nothing having to do with me personally, John. It's just something regarding the company that produced Call of Duty. But before we get to that, we just got to do the usual house cleaning, and we're going to discuss the main topic. So first of all, Facebook page, we got one. Like it. There's a link in the description box below. We've done this many times. Just don't even think about it and just do it. Got a Discord server. I checked today. We are at 730 members, which is really good. And by the way, it's looking like that number is actually going to be increasing quite substantially in the near future. I'll be explaining why either next episode or the episode after that. We're also going to be having some more moderators, which is good as a consequence of that. Also, we have a new episode of The Silver Lining out. Sorry, this one was a little bit late last week, guys. I'll explain why. It has to do with the main topic of the show today. But if you haven't looked at it yet, it's on my channel right now, and this is the thumbnail for it. Artificial blood is now real, and in case none of you have ever played Metal Gear Solid 4, the character in the bottom right there is Raiden. He's a ninja, and he's powered by artificial blood, so I thought that was appropriate. Also, I need to update this photo because it says right there that I have 7 subscribers on my Subscribestar account. But I do have a Subscribestar account, in case you guys don't know what that is. It is like Patreon, except without all the unethical business practice. I think we have 23 subscribers right now. If you guys want to go there, and if you have the ability to support me financially, even if you don't, I recommend you go check it out. Just because of I tried to make things relatively cheap for you guys. So even if you don't have a lot of money, you might still be able to support me in regards to one of the tiers. Like, for example, a lot of you have been requesting an audio version of the Differently Wired Show. Well, there's one available now. And the way that you get it is by supporting me by $1 a month. And that's it. It's damn near free. So yeah, there's a link to it in the description box below. So go check it out if you want. And finally, like I said, we do have... Excuse me. I just had mac and cheese for dinner. So, we do have a free PC code to give away for the upcoming Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which is releasing on October the 25th. I will be announcing who the winner is later today. I just want to get into the main topic first and keep you guys around. I know there are a lot of you that will be listening to this right now to find out who won. But we want to sort of hook you into an important discussion today. Anyways, today's main topic, I picked anxiety. Like, John, we did talk about social anxiety more specifically a few months ago, but we hadn't really discussed general anxiety more generally. And I figured now would be an appropriate time to do so because over the last week or so, I've dealt with a number of anxiety attacks, like more pronounced and abundant than I'm normally used to. And I figured sort of be somewhat therapeutic if I discussed it today. And I figured also by discussing it with you guys, some of you who might be discussing anxiety, that might help me as well as help you, and you get the whole point. So, but I sort of want to start the conversation this way. John, when I messaged you about doing this as a topic, I suggested we do general anxiety disorder, which is another specific version of anxiety, but you figured it'd be more appropriate to discuss it just full stop anxiety. And I can't exactly remember why you said that was. Can you just elaborate or remind me, please?
Sure. I don't actually do diagnosis in my work as a coach.
Right.
So I'm very strict about adhering to my scope of practice, which is helping people with strategies about their life. So people can come to me and say, I have GAD. And I can say, well, okay, that's nice. It doesn't matter to me because virtually all the people that come to me have some level of anxiety or another.
Mm.
Otherwise, why would they spend the money? Why would they bother going to somebody? I actually did have one client of I don't know, 1,000 who had no anxiety. He just needed organized. He said, I don't want any help therapeutically. I'm not interested. That's boring. Just help me get organized. That's it. And that's the only case I've ever seen of someone who had didn't, and I worked with him for a couple of months. I don't think he did. He was very calm and confident, just a little disorganized, and just wanted help getting organized. But we didn't need a diagnosis. But you don't, in my work, need a diagnosis. Somebody comes, you say, have this kind of problem, that kind of problem. I want to learn to peel potatoes. Okay, we'll work on potato peeling, whatever it happens to be. I have a client coming on board in a little while who's very successful in his work, and he doesn't appear to other people to have any issues, but he has anxiety underneath, and it's bugging him. So he doesn't have a GAD. He's just anxious and not feeling as though his life is working right. The thing about anxiety is it doesn't come at you in any sort of logical way. In fact, it wrecks your logic. It overtakes your logic. You can say, well, I shouldn't be anxious about this thing. It's not a big thing. But in your stomach, you've got this knot.
Yeah.
So you can't talk a person out of anxiety. In fact, I will sometimes say to people who come to me anxious, I say, okay, let the anxiety have its way for now. Welcome it in. It's your friend. What's it alerting you to? What is this anxiety alerting you to? I talk about anxiety in that structural sort of way. I'm not. If a person has severe anxiety, they need a therapy that I don't provide. They'll have to go to a trauma-informed therapist or some sort of person who's got an issue with that. So anyway,
yeah,
that's the long version of why I was avoiding actually talking a specific thing. I don't mind talking about anxiety, and I don't mind talking about how it impacts almost everyone I see or talk with in various ways, sometimes life-threatening ways, sometimes very inconvenient ways, often in relationships, makes them socially shy. Sometimes it's not social at all. I've seen people who are social butterflies who don't like talking to one-on-one, and vice versa.
Right.
People who love intimate conversations but just can't talk to 3 or 4 people at once. They just can't do it. So it shows up in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, that's sort of what I want to focus on. And I figure, yeah, there is utility in just focusing on anxiety more broadly because, like you said, if you do dabble in things that are outside of your field of expertise, especially given what you do, there is some danger in that morally as well as legally.
Sure.
Yeah,
it's not ethical either to tread on, to pretend I'm a physiotherapist or something.
Yeah, I understand.
It's what therapist, so I don't do it.
It's one of the reasons why I don't talk about politics on my channel anymore, because I just found that there's dimensions to things that I find myself discovering because I'm a naturally curious person, and I figured that I'd be more suited to just being open-minded and willing to have discussions with people instead of taking the political route where you're just trying to one-up each other all the time, right? So let's talk about anxiety more broadly. I suppose what I can do, just speaking for myself, later on in this discussion, is I can sort of tell you guys about what general anxiety disorder is based on my experience and the proper definition of it, just as a way to contrast what normal anxiety is. So I looked at definitions. I think it was on the American, what is it? Develop. What is the name of it? It's adaa.org. Does that ring a bell to you, John?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Uh,
A.
Hold on, I'm just bringing it up on my browser right now. Anxiety and
Oh,
Depression
oh, okay,
Association of America. Yeah, I looked up
okay.
the
No, I don't.
definition.
I don't know them. Of
It's well, I mean, like they're American, so I don't expect you to. And neither
course.
am I. I just, anyways, I looked at the definition for anxiety on there just as a way to get the conversation going. So, anxiety for the broad majority of the population that has it includes feeling nervous, irritable, being on edge, having a sense of impending danger, panic, or doom. And some of the physical symptoms of that can include stuff like increased heart rate, breathing rapidly, sweating, trembling, feeling weak or tired, difficulty concentrating, having trouble sleeping, and in some pretty severe cases, includes experiencing gastrointestinal problems. I definitely identify with some of these, but I'll see. The problem is when you have general anxiety disorder, it's apparently a more intense version of regular anxiety. But we'll get to that, like I said, in just a little bit. Let's just focus more so on anxiety broadly. Now, John, like, in regards to how anxiety comes about, I don't know, like, if there have been studies regarding what triggers it. Like, maybe there's one factor that triggers it more than the other. But if you don't know that, just generally, what do you know brings about anxiety, like, regardless of what causes it, one more than the other?
Well, a normal stress can become anxiety producing. If you look at an animal being chased by a predator, the animal has all those physical characteristics, increased adrenaline, heart rate, and so on, but it gives it a boost and it runs away. And so anxiety is useful to protect it from predators. And most times predators don't win because, the prey are faster.
Yeah.
So, um, but but that's how it is in its best state.
Mm.
That is to say, the stress-inducing effects. Those who study this a lot are trauma-informed therapists, and uh, they have talked about anxiety coming from your upbringing, from way lack of attachment to a supportive parent, say, or a particular trauma-inducing event. We used to think that PTSD was confined to wartime, but now we're recognizing that there is a kind of a stress disorder, which is disabling for some people, based on certain things not falling into place as you grow up. You may have a genetic predisposition to be sensitive to things, but if you had all the right stuff in place, chances are you'll be slightly better off, growing up slightly more secure. But let's say, for instance, you were ignored as a child and you cried and cried and cried a lot. No one supported you, so you feel that emptiness, that fear, and not knowing why you're afraid. That's just one potential source. But I mean, anxiety can come from big scares. It can come from not knowing. I think not knowing is a big problem. If you're not
Mm.
sure about what's going to happen, if you're not sure about your skill set, can I do this? Can I pass this exam? Students in school, anxiety is through the roof, and it doesn't end at high school. You know, Anxiety is through the roof at college as well,
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll be discussing that.
college and university.
Yeah, a little bit more in just
Yeah.
a little bit. But I just sort of want to bring it back to what you were just saying about PTSD because I sort of identify with that term a little bit, but not in the way that you guys might expect. Because I remember one time way back when used to see you regularly as your client. Um, you told me that some of the symptoms that you witnessed in me were evocative of PTSD, and I responded negatively to that because I thought, well, wait a minute, PTSD is reserved for people that go into war zones and experience humanity at its worst. But then I started to realize, after some of the things that you told me in my own personal research, that what it really comes down to is humanity confronting things that they don't know or understand, and as a result of that, not knowing how to deal with it. So, I suppose for people that are anxious, it's mainly because they come across something that causes them such distress and they don't know how to deal with it, that it naturally makes them predisposed to feelings of worry. And another thing I wanted to bring up in my own research as I was looking at the ADAA website was that sometimes the reason why people are continuously anxious and they can never get over it is because they actually prefer to be anxious. And what I mean by that is because they feel that if they're always worried and they're always in a cautious state, sort of like a meerkat out on the savannah trying to scurry around and flinch at the possibility that a predator might swoop down and kill them. By doing that, it might, if something terrible does happen, then they feel like, well, because they're already predisposed to the negative emotion, that means that when the actual traumatic event that they've been anticipating happens, it doesn't have as much of an effect. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah, it's the interesting problem is that what happens if you are continuously hit with anxiety producing things, that like there's a big lie underneath that I often hear, like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's BS. Because if you're wounded over and over, you are weakened by those wounds. So, if you've had a number of things go wrong in your life and you were abandoned or you were, uh, worried, or there's intergenerational trauma going on, it doesn't make you stronger. It makes you highly sensitive and alert to potential problems.
Mm.
Sometimes my clients will think through things and always work out all the possible bad scenarios that will happen. But what happens is you're not just a person prone to attacks of anxiety, you're constantly anxious. There's an unsteadiness underneath that you just don't feel that sense of security. Gabor Mate, who works in this area and goes around the world talking about anxiety, PTSD, addictions, and the like, says that when he was a child, I think it was Warsaw, he grew up in a ghetto, or started to grow up in a ghetto. His
Right.
mom gave him away in order that he wouldn't be taken by the Gestapo. And even though she saved his life by having him, he carries
Sorry,
a
John. John.
muscle memory of abandonment.
John. Sorry to interrupt you,
Yep.
but unfortunately, Zoom just cut out there for the last 10 seconds. Can you just repeat what you said, please?
How far back?
Just 10 seconds ago.
10 seconds. Well, he has a sense of abandonment based on his mom having giving him away to avoid him being taken by the Gestapo and killed.
Right.
But she protected his life, but he still didn't have his mom.
Mm.
And so he still talks about feeling the effect of that
Right.
in,
Yeah.
in him.
In regards to the saying, like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I think it's more accurate to say what doesn't kill you can make you stronger. It just depends on the support systems available to you and how you deal with it initially, and or if you don't deal with it well initially, how you sort of work past it later on in life. Now, without all that out of the way, I sort of want to just contrast what we were just discussing with the type of anxiety that I deal with, because sometimes it's sort of, I tend to forget that there are different variations of anxiety, like intense versions and less intense versions. Um, the version that I have, like I said before, is called generalized anxiety disorder. And when I was doing research for this, it sort of frightened me, just how small a number of the population has general anxiety disorder. Apparently, in the U.S., it is only 3.1% of the U.S. population. So what is that? That's like around 6 million. I think. And what general anxiety disorder is, it's obviously a more intense version of anxiety. And when I was reading through what the ADAA website, the symptoms that they listed, it's like reading a novel of my own life. So I'll just read this to you very quickly. It says general anxiety disorder is characterized by persistent and excessive worry, and that tends to focus around money, health, family, and work. And those four things, all in particular, are things that I find myself worrying about on a daily basis. Like every day, like you guys who have listened to me for a while, you know how I've talked about how financial independence is something that is paramount in terms of my priorities and trying to deal with it. Obviously, my physical and mental health. That's why I recently took a break from YouTube because I was experiencing burnout. In regards to my family, you know, my father's back pain and his diabetes, and because of that, my mother's taking on too much work. That's a large part of the anxiety. And but it like those are things that like anybody would worry about, right? So like that's sort of I can imagine people just commenting and saying, well, why does that make you unique? Like maybe you should just learn to stop worrying about it so much. Well, there's also another side to it, and this can go for other people that have lower versions of anxiety, but it's more pronounced in people who have GAD apparently. Like you could just worry about stuff that's completely out of your control, right? And as much as people try to tell you, hey, you should stop worrying about this, there's not really much you can do about it, you still do, right? So, like, for example, like I worry a lot
Yeah.
about the state of the political landscape, internet toxicity, uh, worrying about autism and how it's going to affect my day or my mental health just in general. So, like, John, I don't know, maybe if I should even ask you this, like maybe you shouldn't speak to me directly about GAD, but like if you're trying to talk to one of your clients, I suppose. Yeah, okay, here's a good way of phrasing it. So let's just put GAD aside, and let's just say you're discussing with your client how to separate things that they are in control of and things that they aren't in control of. Like, is that something that you've come across, and how
Yes.
do you deal with it?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. What we got to explore is, are you spending all day worrying about Trump's hairstyle or something? Or you know what I mean? We
Yes.
have to, of course,
Sorry.
anyone should worry about that. But there, you've hit the nail on the head when it comes to the nature of the way through this problem. The way through this problem is to be able to tell the difference between those things you can control and the things that you cannot. And focusing attention on those things that you can absolutely have the most control over. That means small things. So, for instance, if keeping your room tidy makes you feel better, it's really a good idea to do that. Because, say, for instance, you're anxious and you're worried about stuff and your room's a mess and things around you are a mess and you can't find stuff, you just give yourself a formula for a spiral of anxiety that's constant. So, what you do is you tidy stuff up, or you fix up whatever's out of balance in your life. You say, oh, wait now, I can do a little bit more of this, or I can eat a little bit better of that thing, or I can drink less or smoke less dope or something. There's some small way you can control stuff. Now, my theory is that if you get control of those small things, you'll have a better sense of your day, a better feeling about what's going on. Doesn't always work. There may be some organic thing going on or some deep-seated worry thing that has to be treated medically or psychologically or psychiatrically. But quite often, for garden variety anxiety disorders of various sorts, you can do better if you focus your attention as much as possible on those things that absolutely are within your realm of control. That's why I won't coach young children, because when I coach people, I help them gain control over their space. Well, children don't have control over their
Yeah.
space. If the parents want to make them eat something healthy and they don't want to eat it, they'll be punished if they don't do this, punished if they don't. So I don't coach children because they don't have enough control usually over their space. But I will coach their parents if their parents are willing to listen.
Sure.
But, you so that I think a lot of it can be resolved if you can turn your attention away from why is the sky this color, or where did we come from, or how did the earth get here, and are there other aliens, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't know. All those big questions that torment people that are quite young continue to torment people also if they don't sort of focus their attention on what they can control or have influence over. So I try to get my folks to focus on what can I do
Mm.
to help me? What can I do to help me? Or what can I do to help us? Or what can I do to help them? What is in my control? If you worry about, you right now in Canada, or the country we're calling from, we have just a night or so ago, um,
People yelling at
6
each other on
leaders.
CBC.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't bother to listen to that because I know it has nothing to do with the truth. I don't ever bother to listen to those things. I used to a lot.
Yeah.
I might watch the returns, but listening to them all lying to each other, I'm not. It's not. It's no interest because no matter what they say, because what they're not talking about is what they'll actually do. What they're doing is trying to convince you that they are this or they are that or that. And this is more or less always the way it's been in politics. You know, to paint yourself with a good brush. So I don't have any control over that except my vote, and I'll make a vote, but I don't worry about it. I don't worry about it. No point.
Yeah. It's something what you said there. It makes perfect logical sense. Excuse me. It makes perfect logical sense when you say it out loud. Like if you focus on the things that are within your control and work hard at those, the positive reinforcement that you get from doing that, it'll inevitably snowball into a momentum. So that when you take on more tasks and bigger tasks, you suddenly feel like things are within your control, and that you can actually do things that once seemed impenetrable. It sort of goes back to that principle that Jordan Peterson put in his book, right? What is it? Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Like,
Yeah.
like I do bother myself when it comes to the stupidity of our collective political leaders, whether those are in Canada or throughout the world. But I suppose instead of letting myself get bogged down by that, what I should do is figure out what is in my control, start from there, and maybe in doing those things that are within my control, I can learn stuff that will allow me to take on those greater challenges, which is the stupidity of our politics, and approach it in a more healthy and thoughtful way, right? Um,
You know, as you're saying that, it just occurred to me that there is a way of approaching these things you can do nothing about, um, and that is they can be like a game. In other words, if I were to cure the bad eating habits of people in North America, what kinds of changes would I make? Well, that'd be, and I can explore that as a game, or as a project, or as something of interest.
mm,
If I can do that without becoming identified with a wheel of worry about it, then it's okay. You can talk and think about whatever you like. What the worrisome thing to me is that anxiety comes from when you're nibbling on the bone of worry and you really can't get at the source of the problem at all, and so it starts to hurt you, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally, professionally. In fact, anxiety can be very destructive. And if you see like a competent worker working away, doing small stuff in a regular and a productive way, you may see somebody who has their anxiety, kind of managed. But you're not ever going to get rid of anxiety at all because it's the upper end of alertness.
yeah.
So it's like it's just alertness gone wrong. So I mean, if you go and you're involved in a war and you're a soldier, you can't just sit around and close your eyes and wander around without being alert. You have to be on guard, and you have to be careful. But it doesn't mean you have to worry. When you go back to the base, you can have a beer with the boys and relax. It's okay. Your working day is done. But if you're living like that all the time, if you're a soldier under stress all the time, that's pretty anxiety producing.
I know I was just sort of talking about how much stuff that's not within my control, like politics, is something that I should try to avoid. But I'm just going to get just a tiny bit political here right now. But just bear with me. It's relevant to what John just said. You know, what any psychiatrist or psychologist that's worth their salt will do when somebody's having trouble confronting something that's bothering them, they will enact the policy of a gradual approach to those problems, and doing so in a way that's voluntary and not so overwhelming so that it continues to be a problem. So, for example, let's say you're claustrophobic and you don't like going into elevators. Well, one way that you can deal with that problem is by taking a step towards an elevator, or two steps maybe, whatever you're comfortable with. And they say, okay, you know what, that's enough for today. I'm going to just step away. And that's fine. But the next day, you try it again and you take a couple more steps towards the elevator. And then the next day, you step inside the elevator, but you don't close the doors. You just walk out of it, right? You just do stuff like that. And the reason why I say I'm just going to get a little bit political about this, and it's relevant for what we're going to be discussing a little bit later, is one thing that it seems to be an increasing trend in regards to our educational systems, especially though the ones that we see in university and college. It's an increasing policy towards making kids safe instead of having them confront things that they might find difficult. Like, for example, people are trying to ban certain books from pre-1950s, for example, because some of them might contain the N-word or something, like, let's say, To Kill a Mockingbird. Even though that's an all-time canonical piece of literature, they want to ban it because they find the word distressing. Well, in my personal opinion, what I think colleges should do is try to expose these people that are going to university and college to the realities of what happened in the past, and find ways to be able to deal with it, so that way they don't let their sensitivities get the better of them, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, you're making a solid point there. I was just thinking as you were saying that business. I guess if you don't like war and torture, you wouldn't teach history and you pretend the Second World War didn't happen and there was no Third Reich.
Yeah.
That would be kind of ridiculous.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like, um, my wife is very sensitive to small animals, and she hates to see little critters killed on the road. Well, she can't do anything about that. You know, it's not nice. I don't want them to be killed. I'd like to protect them, but it happens. Where I live, it happens constantly, all over the place. Because there's
Yeah.
lots of wildlife, so they're constantly being wiped out by cars, and that is something that I can't do anything about.
Yeah. It's. I was just about to say that we should quickly get to the Call of Duty giveaway, but I don't want to end on such a morbid image. Roadkill. Look, the overall point that we're trying to make here, ladies and gentlemen, is that
Do this sort of roadkill.
yeah, don't turn into roadkill. Um, yeah, the overall point that we're trying to make here, guys, is that when it comes to anxiety, as somebody who struggles with it regularly, you shouldn't feel bad, I suppose, and I'm sort of telling this to myself right now simultaneously as I'm telling it to you. You shouldn't feel bad if you fail in your struggles with anxiety. What's important is that you continuously make the attempts in order to deal with it, because the fact of the matter is the realities of the world are still going to be there. Like John said, like that stuff like the Third Reich happened, and the best way that we can deal with it is confront it, learn from it, and grow as human beings, as distressing as it may be. Anyways, we'll get more into talk about anxiety in just a second, but I did promise we're going to get to the Call of Duty giveaway, so let's just bring the graphic up for that real quickly. So, before I announce, well, I don't know who the winner is. What I actually am going to do, just to prove to you guys that this is all fair, I have all the names in this little, here, I'll bring the display up real quick. So as you can see here, I went to this website called commonpicker.com, and one of the apps there is called Random Name Picker, and I have all the names of the people that put their names in. So, John, you remember what we did for the contest was we asked people to share videos from the channel as a way of entering the contest. Well, apparently, the videos on the channel were shared 73 times. And over the past week or so, we've gotten hundreds of more subscribers. So thank you guys to everybody who participated and
Excellent.
helped us out in that regard. I've gotten a lot of kind words from you guys, which were really, really helpful and appreciated, especially because I did have a really anxious week. But before I hit this button, I just wanted to say, and I want to point something out that somebody in my Discord said that I should point out before I do this. Some of you may have heard in the news, particularly online. I'm not certain that this would appear like on national news networks like CNN or your local news network, but it's all over YouTube. John, you know the stuff that's going on in Hong Kong with the pro-democracy protests? Well, there's this video game called Hearthstone. It's sort of like an online card game. And with a lot of video games nowadays, there are online competitions. So you could sign into a website like, let's say, Twitch, where you can stream video games. And you can watch professional people play games professionally. And one of those games is called Hearthstone. Well, apparently there was a gentleman who won, I think, a Hearthstone competition. And when he won, I think he lives in Hong Kong, or he's Chinese. And what he did was he made a pro-Hong Kong statement by putting on a gas mask and saying "Liberty to Hong Kong" or something. I'm paraphrasing here greatly, but you're getting the general idea. And as a result, the company that made this card game called Hearthstone, they retracted this guy's prize money because he made a political statement. And one of the main reasons why they did this was because they have business contacts in China. And because he made this pro-democracy, pro-Hong Kong statement, I suppose that their partners in China were threatening to withdraw their business.
Sure.
So this guy got pilloried for it, and he lost his prize money. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's a close partnership between the guys that made Hearthstone, and the company is named Blizzard, as well as a publisher organization called Activision. And Activision are the same guys that make Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Now, I'm not going to judge anybody who buys this game. It's stuff like this is always very, very complicated. I'm just letting you guys know about this, especially those of you who signed up for this, before we determine who the winner is. Just letting you know what this is so you can decide whether or not to play the game. Or, actually, you know what? I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to let you guys make the decision on your own. So with that in mind, I'm going to announce the winner right now. So I was going to say, John, make a drum roll, but that would probably offend those who are particularly sensitive in our audience. So, So here we go. The winner is Taylor won. Well, Taylor won because people made multiple entries. I had to put their multiple entries in as Taylor 1, Taylor 2, Taylor 3, or Joao 1, 2, 3. So Taylor 1, you are the winner. I will be getting in contact with you very, very soon so that you can download your copy of Call of Duty Modern Warfare if you so choose. So, congratulations to you. Let's move on to the final segment of our show. If I can just get rid of this real quick. So, well, actually, before I do that, I just want to remind you guys... God, I have so many things here. Just give me a second. I just want to remind you guys that we do normally have a mailbag segment on the show. The reason why we haven't had it the past couple of weeks is because prior to coming back to the show, I actually answered all the email questions while I was away on break. So currently, we don't have any email questions ready to go. So if you guys want to have any of your questions related to mental health or autism answered on the show, we'd love to hear from you. And all you have to do to get your question on the show is send it to the email that you see on screen, which is maxderrat@yahoo.ca, and we'll put you right at the front of the line. So, with that out of the way, let's get to this new segment that Wait, did I? Oh, yeah. Sorry, forgive me. We have a new segment on the show where we figured, because a lot of live shows tend to do this nowadays, a lot of podcasts, we tend to discuss, they tend to discuss a lot of news articles, just, bring up what they read in the news and just have discussions about it. Well, I figure because a lot of the more popular podcasts are doing that. Maybe John and I could do that for the foreseeable future. So we're going to bring up another article in regards to anxiety. Hold on, what browser do I have it in? Here it is, that I researched before the show today. And it sort of goes back to what I was just saying about kids in university and college, and how there seems to be a growing tendency for people in their teen years to develop anxiety disorders more so than ever before. I just figured it might be worth discussing that. So, the article that I brought up is called "Anxiety in Teens is Rising. What's Going On?" So, we'll just read through it, and I'll interject, or John, you can interject at any point if you think that there's something important that should be highlighted. So, according to the National Institutes of Health, nearly 1 in 3 of all adolescents ages 13 to 18 will experience an anxiety disorder. These numbers have been rising steadily between 2007 and 2012. Anxiety disorders in children and teens went up 20%. These stats, combined with the rate of hospital admissions for suicidal teenagers also doubling over the past decade, leaves us with many concerning questions. Well, obviously, what's causing the rise in teenagers with severe anxiety? How did we get here? I'll just get past this. High expectations and pressure to succeed. Between standardized testing and a culture of achievement, today's youth can feel pressure to succeed in ways previous generations did not. A survey done every year by Higher Education Research asks incoming college freshmen if they feel overwhelmed by all they have to do. In 2016, 41% of students said yes, compared with 28% in 2000 and 18% in 1985. Now, hold on, I'm just going to stop here. John, I don't know if it's just the cynic in me saying, I don't know if high schools have become more rigorous in their testing, because I remember going to school and I didn't find what they were teaching me to be particularly challenging. But do you sympathize with that, or agree with that assessment?
Well, it varies from person to person, family to family, but generally speaking, it is a high pressure time uh, for teens, because don't forget, they have to look good and they have to say stuff that makes them look good and cool and smart, and they have to wear the right clothes with the right labels on them, and they want to get ahead. And yes, there is a lot of pressure, but the pressure is not just in high school. There's a In our province here, there is testing of all students at various, at I don't know, grades 3 and 8 or something. I don't know what I was never involved in setting it up, but these are standardized tests to measure the kids and measure the school, to see that everybody's proceeding at a good rate. And I don't know. I'm not a keen fan of the testing. I'm not a keen fan of making people go through that. Many of my college clients are uh, terrified by tests. It's some cases do great in work and rotten in tests, because the test whole atmosphere. So I mean, I think there's too much pressure on most students
Yeah,
to succeed in school.
yeah.
I think it can be more fun than it is.
Well, that's certainly the case. And what you're just saying about there, like about how things are being exacerbated nowadays, there's just one thing that's below the next thing that we'll be discussing. Like, you can see it on the screen right now, but we'll get to it in just a second. Just going down the list, a world that feels scary and threatening. We've seen an increase in school shootings with resultant drills and lockdowns in schools. We've seen shootings in public places. There have been terrorist attacks here in the U.S. and around the world, taking many lives. From just watching or reading the news, it is reasonable for anyone to feel afraid in public spaces that previously would have felt safe. Um, I, I'm not sure if I personally agree with that, because even while all these terrible things are indeed happening, the fact of the matter is the statistical likelihood that a school or a person will be involved in these types of uh, displays of public violence is very, very low. So maybe that's sort of overriding my ability to sympathize with that statement. What do you think, John?
Well, it depends on the person, but if you have an environment that is full of scary stuff, it doesn't matter what the percentage You don't want to be one of the statistics. When they made the movie Jaws, I don't know, 1970 sometime,
Yeah.
an awful lot of people stopped swimming in the ocean.
Yeah.
Now, the chances of being eaten up by a great white shark are very slim, but you don't want to be that statistic. It's like, so anxiety will keep you in swimming pools and so on and so forth,
Yeah. Yeah.
and away from swimming in the Caribbean.
Yeah, I was just about to say, that is a really good point. The movie Jaws, because that movie scared people so much that they wouldn't even go swimming in their swimming pools, and like swimming
That
pools,
it was scary, yeah.
yeah, compared to the ocean, they're very small, and you can usually see what's at the bottom of
Yeah.
the bottom of the pool. But even then, people's rationality will take over, and they just won't even swim in there. So yeah, I suppose maybe it's just like I just said, it's just my own personal bias because I tend to look at these things more rationally, whereas other people, rightly or wrongly, just don't tend to do so. But of all the things, I think John and I, we can collectively agree with this next thing that the article lists: social media. Today's children and teens are constantly connected to social media. It's not surprising that their self-esteem and worldview becomes connected to responses to social media posts. It's hard for them not to compare their life and social connections to what they see others posting on social media. Oh boy, that's so true. That is so true.
Yeah, that is a real trap people fall into, and it's so easy to fall into it because you don't want to look stupid, you don't want to look uncool, you want to look your best, you want to have blah blah blah, all those things working. So if you're a little kid who's like really skinny or a little bit pudgy, and you see, you know, a constant barrage of what you should be like, it can wear you down,
Yeah.
uh, and it make you anxious, and next thing you know, you're bulimic, or you're, full of anxiety. Yeah, it can certainly be a problem. I'm not one of those who thinks you can turn back the clock on this stuff, though. I think we need to learn to
Deal with it.
handle social media, teach it. Now, it I have found, interestingly, that some of my clients who've gotten Apple Gear and gotten iWatches are less hooked into social media than they were before, simply because of the way the watch connects you to the world intimately, but not
To other people.
doesn't take your attention.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't take your attention the way a big screen does.
Mm.
A big screen like an iPhone or something like that. So it's an interesting thing, and I want to learn more about it, but it's too early days to get good research. But I'm hearing some interesting impacts about the effect of actually accepting social media for what it is, using it selectively, and so on and so forth. I think there's a way through it, but when I look around and I see young lovers in a restaurant texting one another about what they're going to order for dinner, I say, oh, this is too much. It's like, everybody's at the dinner table and everybody's, looking at a screen of their own little screen. That's a problem.
If I saw like a couple in a restaurant texting to each other from across the table, I'd be so tempted to go over there and just slap the phones out of both their hands. I don't care if that's assault. Because, no,
I see it all the time.
oh really? Oh man.
Oh yeah,
Just like, hey
all the
cutie,
time.
how's it going? What do you want to eat? You're right there. Do you really need
Yeah.
emojis to be able to express emotion? You have faces. Anyways, yeah, one of the things that I think causes. I originally, a while back, wanted to do a video when I was still doing political stuff titled, Is the Internet the Digital Heart of Darkness? Because the way that a lot of social media websites are structured, they're structured in a way to reward impulsive behavior, like Twitter. Twitter is an absolute cesspool. The way with the few characters and the immediate access to people that you hate, it's right there, and it stimulates the id aspect of your psyche, if you want to take a Freudian perspective on it, and just brings out the worst in people. If you're a kid and you're still developing and you have a Twitter account and yeah, you're friends with everybody, and you see a whole bunch of people sharing political memes about how terrible certain politicians are, it can lead to a really, really warped worldview and increase your anxiety as to where the world is going, because it's like you're always looking into the dark side of every single person that or that you're aware of. And that's especially true
Hmm.
for me. Like I'm 26 years old right now, but I do YouTube, and thankfully I've sort of become desensitized to most of the negative comments that I get. But even then, it's quite terrible.
Well, part of the thing, the way of working through some of this is to get your life in balance.
Yeah.
Uh, um, Earlier, I sent you a copy of that self-care wheel thing,
Oh yeah, yeah.
where
Here, I'll
there
bring it
are.
up. I'll bring it up.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah, I haven't brought it up yet.
uh, okay, okay.
I'll just bring it up to the top of OBS. Sorry, guys, it's looking a little bit ghetto. Forgive me. All right. Yeah, so I have the self care wheel up right now. So I
Okay. You can see there are 6 domains that Olga Phoenix talks about on the self-care wheel. And if you ignore one of those, then you won't be looking after yourself. Now, in order to be good to the world and good to one another, you also have to be good to yourself enough so that you're not in jeopardy. So you can see personal, professional, physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual. Now, spiritual could be self-reflection, could be meditation, and so on. It could be religion. It could be just yoga classes. But you need those domains covered off. So if a person is anxious about something, I would say they could actually look at this wheel and say, "Oh, is there some domain here? Is there some domain of me that's not being taken care of?"
hmm.
Like if you glance around that, it covers off a lot of stuff. It's kind of a handy thing people could have a look at. olgaphoenix.com, or we can mail it to them. The self-care assessment worksheet, transforming the pain. So you look at all this stuff and you see, for instance,
uh,
you can have everything going. Go ahead.
sorry to interrupt you, John. I'm just thinking about the people that might be just listening to the audio version of this, so we should probably just describe to them
Ah,
what we're looking at. So,
okay. Well, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so as John said, there's this thing called the self care wheel. And apparently it's created by somebody named Olga Phoenix, or it's a part of something called the Olga Phoenix Project. And you can go to the website olgaphoenix.com, Olga being the Russian name for a woman, and Phoenix being the city in what, Arizona, yeah, or the
Yeah, there
mythical
you go.
creature. And on the wheel there are 6 dimensions: physical, psychological, professional, emotional, personal, and spiritual. And in those 6 dimensions there are things obviously related to those 6 dimensions that you might want to cross off or at least give proper consideration to. If you go around this and you identify with one of the things as something that you might not be giving proper consideration to in your life, it might be something that you want to try to integrate into your regular schedule, right? So that's all I wanted to
Yeah,
say.
sure. No, that's good. You did that. I'm going to talk about individual ones for a moment. For
Sure.
instance, uh, personal. One of the items on the personal is learn who you are and figure out what you want in life. If you don't have that done, then nothing else will really take over. You need that done. You need to know where you're headed. You need to have a kind of vision or sense of where you want to be in your life. Um, if you don't have safe housing in the physical domain, if you're unsafe in housing, of course you're going to be anxious because things are not going to work for you. If you don't, let me see, we're emotional, laughing, watching a funny movie. Like if you never laugh, if you never find any joy in stuff, then you're gonna be kind of emotionally bound up. So all these things need some way or another to be ticked off. Um, I think looking at the wheel is a great idea for people who find themselves distressed or anxious.
Mm.
Uh, and I notice here in professional it says take time for lunch. I have an awful tendency to leave my office and go to the lunchroom and start eating lunch and doing work. And then I realize, wait a minute, I can have a break here. I can actually, I can actually, you know, eat and enjoy what I'm eating. In fact, it's funny. This is a kind of a cute thing that I saw in a book called Zen. and I thought it might come up tonight. Let's see where.
Zen.
The book is called Essential Zen.
I'm just gonna read through this while you're. Let's see. Physical, safe housing.
See if this is helpful or not. If there is no clear awareness of how this human mind and body functions from moment to moment, division and conflict continue and expound. Having an image of oneself and of what one should do or should not do creates duality and has nothing to do with undivided attention to what actually is taking place. Attention comes from nowhere. It has no cause. It belongs to no one. When it functions effortlessly, there is no duality. This is by a fellow, Tony Parker. So this is an interesting element. I mean, you could almost make a show about this. If you're totally in the flow of what you're doing, you're not going to be anxious. You're not going to be judging yourself by outside. A lot of anxiety can come from what I call the world of should. Oh, this is me. I'm at this age. I should be married now. I should be working for myself. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. And when we do that, we're not in ourselves. We're on top of ourselves, worrying about ourselves. I'm not measuring up. I don't have a big car. I don't have the right degrees. I don't have this. I don't have that. That's not healthy. That's not wholesome. So what he's talking about in that Tony Parker saying is, get into what you're doing and do what you're doing and live in that moment of what you're doing. I mean, Eckhart Tolle made a whole, livelihood out of, being in the now.
Eckhart Tolle.
That's part of it.
Why does that name sound familiar to me? Did he do?
Well, he wrote a New World, and another book I read a while ago. And he has a large following of people. He's a kind of a philosopher who's calendars.
Did he do
about living in the now, living in the present moment?
Did he do the book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
No, that's Robert Pirsig. Older guy.
Okay. So why did I think it? Okay. Anyways, but yeah, absolutely. It sort of goes back to what we've.
But there are certain elements of similarness in the theme. In the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, Pirsig tries to talk about being in the moment and living in the now and learn to maintain your motorcycle. And that's part of, don't drive your motorcycle and expect other people to look after it. Know it, learn it, do what you need to do to take care of stuff.
Mm. Yeah, it sort of goes back to what we've been saying a lot since we've been doing this podcast from the beginning of the year. If you're anxious and you don't know how to get on top of things or how to avoid it, the best thing that you can do is by picking a project or picking something small, something that you can take control of, something that's not out of your control. And when you're working at that, your attention, especially if you're on the spectrum like I am, your attention could be so focused on that all the other things that were bothering you just float away and the project becomes all important. And if you keep yourself consistently busy, especially if you have a consistent schedule, something that you stick to, you might need it to be more strict or less strict depending on your temperament or your mental predisposition. Once you got that, then you're pretty much set. Well, not roughly speaking. You might have
there's one other I got to read, Max. I just found this so cute from the same book, Essential Zen. Zung Sang would say, when you eat, just eat. When you read the newspaper, just read the newspaper. Don't do anything other than what you're doing. One day a student saw him reading the newspaper while he was eating. The student asked if this did not contradict his teaching. Zung Sang said, when you eat and read the newspaper, just eat and read the newspaper.
Nice.
Because he wasn't living in the world of should.
Yeah.
In that moment, he was doing the thing that felt right to him to do. Mm-hmm. And so there's no contradiction.
Yeah. That's
funny.
And some people might confuse that saying as sort of like a follow your bliss utilitarian worldview, but it's not. It's like if in a particular moment, do what you're doing and try not to focus on other things, so that way you're not creating so much mental chaos for yourself.
You're in that moment. Like if you're the hunter, you must focus on the hunt.
Yeah, you can't be thinking.
You can't be daydreaming about a billiards game.
Yeah.
a game of poker. You have to focus on the. If you're driving your car, you don't want to be sleeping and doing meditation. You want to actually focus on the wheel and the road, right? Some people do the other, but it doesn't work well.
Yeah, not
Reminds
yet.
me of one day I was watching. One day, my wife and I were driving down this 401, which is a big highway outside Toronto,
Yeah.
and the woman was reading a newspaper and balancing a coffee cup and a cigarette, and I think she had a cigarette and was trying to get her makeup. I mean, it was just astounding.
What?
I don't know how she was doing all this stuff at once. Coffee, which sip of coffee, lay down cigarette, pick up cigarette, touch up the eyebrows. It was like not Zen. Not Zen at all.
It's like, putting on your makeup, reading the newspaper, smoking a cigarette. Yeah, was she multi-limbed? Like, was she like an ancient Hindu god? Like, I don't understand how that's possible.
Well, you're sort of balancing stuff, You can hold a cigarette here, you can hold it one side of your mouth and sip coffee on the other, I guess, while you're, I don't know. It was silly to watch. Besides, I couldn't watch it too much. I was driving my car.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, I was more concerned with not dying at that moment. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, I have to head off now, Max.
Yeah, I was just about to say. All right. Thank you so much, John. We've come to the end of the show anyway, so thank you so much, John. I'll do the house cleaning that we usually do at the end. So best of luck with the rest of your week.
Okay.
All right. See ya.
Okay. See you later.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, it's true. We have come to the end of the Differently Wired show. Thank you so much for joining us. Listen, if you liked what we discussed this show, if you have any comments, make sure that you leave your comments down below. While we still have you guys, I was just about to say like the stream, but I'll address that in a second. Gray59 sends in a $10 super chat. Dude, thank you so much. He didn't leave a comment. He just sent that in. It's very, very much appreciated. Thankfully, we're getting to the point where we can actually start taking the donations that you guys have sent in to us and actually actively building our production setup, expanding a little bit so that way we can and provide you guys with a little bit more support. It sort of goes back to what we were saying towards the beginning of the stream, how we're going to be getting a lot more Discord users and moderators. I will discuss that hopefully next week. I can't really talk about it right now, but it's going to be pretty cool. But before I conclude, I also want to remind you guys that thankfully I don't really have to tell you guys much. Now you guys seem to just do it without me telling you, but just in case, there are 53 people watching and 51 likes. So if the two people, if you haven't liked the stream yet, we really appreciate it if you do, because when you do, it tells the YouTube algorithm that this content is worth watching, and it passes it around, puts it into people's recommended feeds, and who knows, there might be somebody out there that's struggling with mental health problems that could really use some sort of advice or support, especially somebody that's dealing with anxiety. And if you like the stream, then you might be inadvertently helping a complete stranger and making the world a little bit of a better place. Excuse me. I don't think there's anything else I need to bring up. Oh yeah, because I did recently, I'm just going to plug the subscribe star thing again, but it's for a pertinent reason. Let me get rid of this graphic. La 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 la. Where is the? Oh, here it is. Okay, so one of the rewards that I offer to people if you subscribe at $2 a month is access to an after show for the Differently Wired show. So after we're done the show, we go into the Discord server, and there is a secret hidden voice chat and text chat for people that subscribe at $2 a month, where we just hang out or talk about whatever. So if you're interested in stuff like that, plus there are other rewards at the $2 tier. What are they? It's you get access to movie night, which we host every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. I think we're going to be watching The Shining this Saturday because, it's October and horror, you get the point. There's the audio version of the show and also audio versions of any of my other videos if you guys desire those. So with that out of the way, I don't think there's anything left, so I'll just say adios to you, my beautiful, beautiful people, and until next time, stay yellow.